I'm genuinely confused as to how a race can have so many chaotic moments, but still end up being very bland on the broader scheme of things. Max Verstappen has won the Chinese Grand Prix. Yes, of course, casual, we all know that. It's been a great weekend for him. And we should talk a little bit more about how good he was this weekend. But there are so many bigger stories to pull apart, so many crazy things. It's a weekend where all of us folks have to celebrate because on the Inside Line F1 podcast, we have three favorite drivers. One unironically, two ironically. Actually, no, not three. We have four, right? Because Carlos Sainz as well. So Sainz and Fernando Alonso, we can count them as our unironic favorites here. But the ironic ones both ended up getting a penalty today, and that is a celebration of it all. Kunal, Logan Sargent, Lance Stroll, two incredible performances, particularly by Lance. What a restart, huh?
My goodness.
I mean, we
Look,
just have to bring it up, right? Because we love them so much. We always talk about them. We always praise them to the point. So we have to celebrate when they both do special things together.
together and individually, right? That's what they did. Lance Stroll was actually, at the restart, you are supposed to look at the car ahead. Period. Daniel Ricciardo has been so furious with him being with Lance Stroll for whatever happened there, and it was ironically Lance had somebody up ahead locked up their brakes, and that somebody actually was Fernando Alonso, who locked up his brakes and then had the concertina effect, as we say. But you know, I don't think Lance would have anyway been in the points. What do you guys think?
It's unlikely, no, Sundaram? It's
I think he was battling. I think he was battling at for 12th or 13th at the point. No, I think he was within the top
He
10
was
at
in
that
the
point.
points then because he was just behind Oscar Piastri and the gang.
He was literally eighth. He was eighth at that point, and he could have been there maybe a point or two towards the end. But it's very funny because the person who's done this is of course Lance Stroll, and the person he's done it to did it 6 years ago to Max Verstappen. And I don't know if Max Verstappen got a deja vu moment during the post race cool down room when he saw the replay of this. But Daniel Ricciardo was furious. He was absolutely furious. And they showed the replay so many times that everyone was focusing on Fernando Alonso. But it is actually Carlos Sainz who actually kickstarted all of this. He was trying to get closer to Perez. He locked up. He didn't lock up, but he came very, very close to Perez. Alonso then had to lock up, and then that just let everyone else come behind one after the other. Very interesting, but unfortunately, it's Lance Stroll, the person who we really been debating if he deserves a place in the sport, and it's not going to help him at all. This incident.
But what a shot, huh? Ricardo getting skyrocketed up in the air, and then eventually what he said in the media cannot be repeated here. But
Yeah.
let's just say you have to listen to that interview to understand more of it. But crazy 10-second penalty there. And I just really want to get rid of all the indisciplined driving before we talk about the strategy because there was so much in the strategic side of things that is so interesting about this race. But how long is it, guys, before Kevin Magnussen gets torpedoed now out of the seat? Because that move on Yuki Tsunoda, and then eventually the kind of aggressive driving for God knows what position it was, Kunal. Is it sometime? I mean, I imagine, right? If you're a Formula One driver and you come across Kevin Magnussen, it might be the most annoying thing in the world to do because this guy will just. How do you even describe those sort of moves over there?
Truth be told, Kevin Magnussen has been on the Inside Line F1 podcast. And guys, he just loves being on the inside. And then he gets so excited that he forgets and he ends up tapping people. He's done this to Alexander Albon before a couple of years ago. We clearly remember was Silverstone. And this is classic Kevin Magnussen, right? And it just so happens that, Nico Hulkenberg goes and scores a point, but Kevin Magnussen didn't. And all of this actually, truth be told, the team debrief that I listened into said that not the debrief, sorry, the Kevin Magnussen post race interview. He said you just qualify out of position, and for the Haas not being in Q2 is out of position, and this is how your race actually unfolds. So that's literally what happened. But yeah, just amateurish stuff, by Kevin Magnussen because he's been here for several times. He's not racing the first time, in Formula One, but he keeps making this very mistake each time. And I think even drivers in Formula 2 and Formula 3 sometimes don't end up making such silly mistakes, if that's the word.
Yeah, it's a weird race, a race full of silly mistakes here and there. One also from our driver of the day, Fernando Alonso, one where he actually snapped off at the end and didn't control it. Sorry, I've just unanimously declared him to be the driver of the day. Do we all agree? Firstly, like because we have so many options. There's Alonso, there's Norris, there is Hulkenberg, there is Sainz after recovering from a terrible crash as well. Who are you guys picking now?
I think we
No,
should have
no,
a driver of the day and the driver of the weekend.
Okay, go
I,
for
I
it.
would I would give it to Fernando Alonso for the driver of the weekend and the driver of the day. I know Lando Norris won it. I know you guys track it extremely well, which means probably a lot of our listeners also track these fan voted polls that come up. But Fernando Alonso through the entire weekend, Fernando Alonso through the entire Chinese Grand Prix was incredible. 42-year-old, people keep saying his age. They should keep saying his age because what he did on track, what he did on the gravel and then on the track, again, was incredible. And just one clear stat which explains what Fernando is doing. In 4 out of the 5 races this season, Fernando Alonso has finished lower than he started, right? And why is this stat important? This stat is important because, first, it proves that Fernando Alonso is taking a lot of risks in Q3 to get that Aston Martin to qualify out of position, right? In fact, he was out of position even at the start. He was P2 at the start. He even overtook Checo Perez at the start, right?
Yeah.
The other reason why this stat is critical is because Fernando Alonso finishing lower than where he started proves that his Aston Martin doesn't actually have the pace to compete with the compete at the position he ends up qualifying at.
And I think that's been the story for Fernando ever since he made a return to Formula One. It was very uncharacteristic of him to put that Alpine in P2 in Canada a couple of years ago, and then kind of drop off in the race. And he's done that throughout last year as well. I mean, in fact, last year they had better race pace compared to this year, but that's the sort of stuff that he does in qualifying. He's managed to put those cars in places where it's not supposed to be, and then just drops behind during the race. He actually had one, the pair of softs that he had. I was wondering if he's going to actually put them on during the start, but then it was meaningless because he has Perez and Verstappen in front of him. He's not fighting them. What's the point of grabbing a place or two at the very start? But I think at the end also, I think that was quite debatable. Why did they put on the softs? I think we'll come to that. But for me, again, we'll come to that, but for me, like Kunal said, the driver of the weekend was Fernando. Completely impressive what he had done on track and off it. But my driver of the day, I think I'll go with Lando Norris. Very good drive. Not the best of starts yesterday, but I think he's managed to reclaim all of that and finish P2 ahead of Sergio Perez. So I think I'm going to go with Norris. What about
But
you, Soumil?
it's also interesting, right? Of course, Fernando for the entire weekend and for the kind of crazy stuff he's been doing, and you guys echoed my sentiments exactly in that regard. But with Lando Norris, it's interesting, and I know we're talking about the race here primarily, but it's just something that has to be brought up about how in those critical moments where you need a lot more from a driver, you tend to think of Lando Norris as being a driver who's just waiting as rather. Let's put it this way: we always look at Lando Norris as a driver who's destined for more, who's bound for bigger things and bound for race wins and championships. But when it all comes calling towards him, like that one critical qualifying lap, like let's say a good start in a sprint race, it all seems to unravel here and there somewhat. And this time, even though the sprint went awry, I like how he corrected it in the race. And even though, sure, it was a big benefit thanks to the virtual safety car and then the safety car, eventually, Kunal, we can say that it's still not there yet with him, is it? There's still that little bit of I don't know what it is because he never reveals it in the interviews, but maybe just that little bit more of last minute composure, perhaps that seems to be lacking or something.
I in fact think he's got a lot of composure for having been in this position for what 2 or 3 seasons now,
Yeah,
knocking on the door. 2021 Russia, right? That's the race we'll keep
yeah.
remembering till he actually wins something. But he's actually been very very clear with what happened today and in general what's happening with McLaren because he's like, I know the trajectory we are on. I trust that. That's why I've signed long term, and you can actually see that, right? And one of the reasons why Lando Norris and both the McLarens, for that matter, were pretty strong. Oscar Piastri was carrying damage from Daniel Ricciardo and Lance Stroll's crash, right? Sorry. But one of the reasons why Lando Norris could actually manage P2 and do it over a single stop was because the track conditions were cooler. The wind direction, he said, was actually better wind direction for us. That's a very strange thing, but yeah,
Yeah.
He overtook Fernando Alonso, so he gained track position, right? And McLaren's pace on that hard tire was what Ferrari was actually most surprised by. Sprint weekend, not a lot of running, especially on the hard. Ferrari got undone by the hard, but the McLaren came alive on that hard tire with Lando Norris. And like you said, the safety car VSC helped him convert his race into a one stopper.
I think it's payback for last weekend in Japan. I mean, last time both Ferraris had the number on Lando Norris. They pushed him out of the podium positions, and this
Yeah.
time Norris has just given a little bit of payback. But I think Norris has been quite good even throughout the weekend. Even his pole lap during sprint qualifying was actually very good. The first two sectors in especially he was very good, and he still managed to put that pole lap by 1.621 seconds, the second biggest margin in the hybrid era after Nico Rosberg. So I think he's been very good throughout this weekend, and he's almost there. I think he's getting better, but yeah, he's sometimes still tends to bottle it at the very last moment. But I think he's managed to hold it together this time, and he's looking very good.
And it doesn't help out that there's so much of infighting within Ferrari that we should come to in a second. But let's also talk a little bit more about the strategy and what exactly went there for Ferrari. Carlos Sainz actually initially just getting caught out by the timing of the safety car in the VSC. He just actually boxed, was it 4 or 5 odd laps before that? So eventually he couldn't make that pit stop. And Leclerc benefited a lot from that. And then eventually he also had that mistake earlier on Saturday that compromised him quite a fair bit. But there's also an interesting question that we just have to ask with Alonso and that whole safety car on VSC that completely turned around the race. Why just why did they go on the softs? Seriously, what was going on there? They had options, didn't they, Sundaram? I think they had a hard compound tire and a medium. So did they, or what was the exact allocation?
So they had one medium, one hard. Sorry, they had two mediums, one hard, and one soft for this race. So ideally, what they should have been following was the medium, hard, medium, and they did not. They decided to plonk on a set of softs during the second VSC. It's a bit surprising for me because at the time Alonso was fourth in the running, and at most he would have probably finished fifth ahead of Russell, ahead of Piastri. But now he's finished seventh, I believe. He finished seventh behind George Russell. He didn't have enough pace towards the end with the mediums. He did manage to cover a lot of ground in the initial laps on that last set of mediums, but then even that kind of was not able to match Russell's time, and he just wasn't able to get past him. Little debatable, I would say. If I think if he had just carried on with the hards and not moved to softs and then made a regulation move to mediums, I think he would have still finished fifth. I think he's finished one or two places further behind this time.
I actually have a different view than that because what happened is when the safety car came out, let's remember the safety car actually ruined a lot of people's races as well, Fernando Alonso included. He was at the hard tire was the key tire for the race. Okay. When the safety car came out, Fernando Alonso was in the middle of his hard tire stint, and that's it. That was it. So he wanted to see if he could use the safety car to try and do something different, right? Interestingly, Fernando Alonso actually jokingly said post race was maybe next time we just don't participate in the sprint race so we have extra tires for the Grand Prix because his tire strategy was dictated by what Sundaram pointed out that he had a limited number of tire options. Soft was one of those options. They just decided to bolt on that soft and see where it would have landed them up. I'm glad he did that because he did all the late race overtaking. He was, lapping 2 to 3 seconds quicker than the others. I remember when George Russell and Carlos Sainz in, sixth and fifth respectively got radio messages from their engineers saying Fernando's taken the softs. He was at that time 11th when they got the messages and saying he might just come up very close to us by the end of the race.
There's
And
something else I
I'm
picked up from the
Go
from the
ahead.
pit radio. The fact is that when Alonso was going to switch back to the mediums, I think how many laps was it? 12 laps or 13 laps from the end. Aston Martin actually asked Alonso, "See, we have a set of new mediums and we have a set of old softs. What do you want to go with? Do you want to go with the old softs?" He said, "No, no. Give me the new mediums. I'm not going with the old softs." And eventually went with the new medium. And that's what I'm trying to really understand, Kunal, because if when you had a medium hard medium, obviously your middle stint, the hard one, the one on the hards, has to be the longer one, so you have roughly 15-20 laps on the mediums. Why would they want to switch on to softs and then have a longer stint on the softs than he did on the hards? That's something which is really baffling to me.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
also the soft stint when he did them, he ran them under the safety car as well, right? So that
Yeah,
stint,
eight
even though he's done
laps.
20 odd laps,
Yeah.
even though he's done 20 odd laps on the soft, because when you read the tire indicator, the soft is because it's 11 laps on the medium, 12 laps on the hard, and then 20 laps on the soft, right? And he ran a lot of that. So they were just trying to do something different. Again, goes back to the stat. They don't have the pace. They're fighting in positions much higher than the others. They said, "Can we try something else? Can we try something different?" Fernando's always said the car is P7, P8, P9 position. Conveniently, he leaves out P10 because he assumes that's what Lance Stroll will take, right? But to but Lance Stroll is
Nicely done.
doesn't want to take P10 either way. So that's just the reading of what their strategy was in my eyes at least.
And I'm glad it happened eventually because entertainment in the end was only guaranteed by one Fernando Alonso. And even though it might be just a subjective point to talk about in the race, but we really missed that. I mean, the kind of passes that he made, the kind of battles that we saw eventually going side by side, wheel to wheel. And I was just thinking, okay, if he makes that pit stop, where will he cycle out? How far will he come back? I thought he'd finish somewhere around P11, P12. But kudos to him for finishing P7. That is a great performance in the end where everyone was just dying with grip and just not
And I
having
was
any.
also Now, I was watching the radio throughout all this time. So all the cars that were ahead of him, they gave the driver that instruction that Alonso is coming on with new set of mediums. He's super quick. He's doing a lap. He's doing a second quicker. Do not fight him. That's also the instruction they gave to Lewis Hamilton as well. Do not waste your tires on Fernando Alonso. Let him just pass. So they're also just letting him pass. They're also not really battling him, but he did an exceptional job on the set of mediums trying to come up to seventh. But after Alonso giving us that little dash towards the end, I have to go back to Kevin Magnussen and Lance Stroll's scrap. I think that was the best bit of racing that we saw in today's race. For I think just a bit over a lap, they were going at it corner after corner, and I absolutely loved that.
That too for the last place in
Yeah.
the
Yes.
standings. It was 16th or 17th place. 16th place, I would believe. And but that's it's important we say that because Stroll versus Magnussen for 16th place. For everyone who probably just tuned in at the end of the race, guys, please remember Max Verstappen was the one who won, not Joke won you, even though he got a bigger cheer
Yes.
from the crowds.
Yes.
Okay, lots of things to clarify. It was Max Verstappen who won, who's by the way won 50% of all the races since the last Chinese Grand Prix. Red Bull Racing's 100th pole position is what he got. Like we spoke in the preview, will it be Red Bull's 100th or Ferrari's 250th? Continues to be Red Bull. Also, the Chinese Grand Prix marshals actually were a bit out of practice, so please pardon them for not being able to recover Valtteri Bottas's car. What seemed like a routine recovery, at least I would believe so. Hit the neutral button and then the car would, they were trying to, of course, do it. I'm just making a joke out of it. It's been 5 years since Formula One last raced here because that seemed a little out of whack, right? Suddenly there's a car stricken and then you need to, put a full safety car there. Of course, my daughter was excited because she loves to see the safety car rather than she loves to see the safety car on track. She thinks all the cars should go racing. They shouldn't wait in the pit lane.
Yeah, first time in ages, I think we've seen that safety car out too. But weird that's that. I think in the last 4 out of 5 Chinese Grand Prix, we have the safety car come out. And eventually that changed the complexion of the race a lot. But yeah, I particularly also then really want to bring up one thing that we need to talk about, that even though Lewis Hamilton was P18 in qualifying, he actually got points, guys. Can you believe it? Like for all the noise everyone made on social media for everything that happened, it doesn't cover up for what actually ended up being a very terrible weekend. But he did get there in the end. And I'd love to know your perspective on the entire Mercedes weekend so far and what their issues seem to be. Because at this stage, even the press releases from Mercedes aren't quite coming out with that much fervor, saying, "Hey guys, we're sorry, sorry for the disappointment. Here's a letter so that we can please you," or something like that sort. It's all gone expected now.
That's true. Where is that fan letter or letter to the fans, dear Mercedes, AMG, Petronas, Formula One team, whatever the name is? Are you guys disappointed we don't have a letter just yet? Anyone from Team LH listening in, please let us know if you are actually missing on that letter from Mercedes because they actually did that last year. Now it's all about optimism. Now it's like, we've got the pace, the results don't show it, the correlation is where we have a challenge. But Lewis put it very bluntly. And he actually said two things very bluntly. First, he said, I was pretty slow. The battles I had were okay. Right. And then post race, he said on the radio, that setup change that I made was on me. I should have never made that setup change. The one again that went viral on social media, right? Because that's just the nature of what Mercedes is actually facing. Drivers and engineers are just trying different things to try and see if it actually helps them recover some of the pace. That's the truth with where I believe Mercedes and their problems lie.
He actually went on to say that he is never doing that in his life ever again, making such a setup change, thinking that it's never gonna have any effect on how his car performs. He said, "Yeah, my bad. Another tough day." And the team says, "Yeah, this is going to be one of those races that we don't remember." Surprising, but Hamilton had been complaining of the car and the tires since the very beginning. He did not like starting on the soft tires, and he was only relieved that he managed to get onto the mediums. But a good recovery drive, not the easiest of races for him, and probably very unfamiliar territory for Lewis Hamilton being at the back, but he's usually been at the back when he still has a much quicker car and he can get past them much easily. But I think he had his work was pretty much cut out. He had to do a lot of stuff today.
And it's wait,
Yeah, sorry, that was me. I spoke when it was on mute. But my favorite Lewis Hamilton stat was that Nico Hulkenberg, who scored points for the third time in 5 races for Haas, okay, finished just 2.5 seconds behind the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. And of course, Lewis Hamilton finished 20 seconds behind George Russell. Okay, that's just where Lewis Hamilton is. But hats off to Nico Hulkenberg. 3 times in 5 races, he scored points. And, with Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg actually highlighted this. If the top five end up scoring points and having a regular race, the midfield runners actually have no scope, no chance, right? In all the 5 races this year, there has been at least one chance that's been given to outside of the top five teams to claim a spot in qualifying or in the races. The two heroes, and I say heroes because it's extremely competitive outside of the top five. The two heroes have been Yuki Tsunoda, who of course got knocked out this race weekend, and then Nico Hulkenberg. So they've either taken that vacant slot in qualifying or then taken the extra point or two in the race itself.
I think it's a perfect time to move on to a Nico Hulkenberg stat because he's now matched the record for the most Grand Prix without a race win in Formula One. So he's equaled the record set by Andrea De Cesaris back in the 80s. 208 races without a single race win. One more. So if he doesn't win, what do we have next? We have Miami. So if he doesn't win the Miami Grand Prix, he is going to be the outright holder of that record.
we need a pile up like we saw at the restart in Miami, just so that we can counter that number and get the wrongs right at last. We come on. Where is Lance Stroll when needed the most? Seriously. But Alpine is also a subject that we should talk about, guys, before we end up just wrapping around the entire episode and talking about the entire race and how it went out. Because for once, we saw a difference in the numbers. Pierre Gasly did outqualify Esteban Ocon, which was interesting to see. But generally, too, it was great to see the Alpines mixing up with the Williams. And not sure if the upgrades are 100% there and if this is the car that they're going to be carrying forward all the way through. But it definitely is a step in the right direction. But still, Bruno Famin's comments about the drivers being happy isn't quite reflected in how the drivers look like in any of the videos Alpine have posted on their social media. I mean, they look tired, Kunal. It's like they've already had it all with this entire season and they just want to pack up and leave. Even though this was quite a reassuring performance in that regard.
Yeah, they had the best qualifying result of the season and then the best race result of the season as well. A couple of seconds away from the points finish for Esteban Ocon. I would say Ocon's car was the only car that had the upgrades, which is why Pierre Gasly at the end of the race told the team, if my car had the upgrades, maybe I would have been fighting up ahead as well. Ocon will get the upgrades in Miami. Alpine just chose to fast track the upgrades they could, so they could get just one set, and they went to Ocon's car. But all in all, Alpine will recover from this. So we should, anyone wanted to make fun of them should make fun of them right away because, they've had a bad start, but they seem like they are on a path to recovery. It could be a slow path. It is a steep path. Okay. But I'm pretty sure that it's going to happen. And will this be a reason why there's a bigger churn in the team? Most possibly it could be so. But, let's see what happens when both cars have the upgrades and further upgrades in Miami.
And it's going to be a weekend where there is going to be a sprint as well. That's also going to be cool. But to end the episode, Sundaram, you have a particular stat that really could be very interesting to sum it up on. Wait, one sec. What's the number all about?
So this is one stat I've been waiting for since a year to put out, and I'm finally able to do that now that Max Verstappen's won this race. So Red Bull in 2005 decided to join Formula One, and 20 years later, they are now the team with the most wins in Formula One, 117, and they've just eclipsed Mercedes. I'm sure they must have done it back in 2013, 2014. I mean, 20 between the 4 years of Vettel over there. But yeah, they have the most wins in Formula One since their debut in 2005. Ferrari have 62, McLaren have 45, and Renault have 18. Just one fine day, Dietrich Mateschitz decides that I'm going to go into Formula One. Energy drinks company gets into Formula One and is one of the most successful in 2 decades.
Incredible, right?
Yeah. Same place where they got their first win as well.
Yeah. Same place
Oh,
where they got their first pole as well.
interesting bit. So they got the first pole here, and I don't know if you noticed it in the cool down room. Their overalls for this race has the design from 2009 on the caps and probably even on the
They
overalls on the sides.
do.
They have the design from what they used in 2009, probably to celebrate that, commemorate that. But yes, it's a nice little touch.
I
Wow.
noticed with the Checo cap actually. I saw
Check
there's
check
a new
check the
retro
Checo cap.
collection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like blind spotted by all these things. The only thing that stood out for me 2009 to 2020, 24, whatever, was Fernando Alonso was there back then, and he was there this weekend as well as a third driver on pole position or whatever, third driver in qualifying.
There were two drivers. There were two drivers in 2004. Fernando Alonso and one Zhou Guanyu.
Oh well, wow, yeah, that's true. Yeah. He was in the stands watching, dreaming, all of that. But did you guys also notice the wreath that they have as a trophy?
Yeah, it was beautiful,
I,
honestly.
I don't know if the drivers were supposed to wear them because if it's a wreath, you're supposed to wear it, but none of them
They
wore
were
it,
never going to wear
right?
it. They were never going to wear it.
Never,
He
no
was. He
chance.
was.
Yeah.
And
It was
then
much
a couple of
smaller.
more. Yeah.
It was much smaller for Lando Norris and Sergio Perez, so that would have been extremely funny if they wore that. Still possible for Max Verstappen, but they were never going to wear it. Yeah, Kunal, you were saying.
Yeah, it's like a kiss activated trophy. I don't know if I've ever seen a driver kiss it and then the colors show up or whatever. But Fernando Alonso also has gone in, I think in 3 races he's gone from 0 to 6 penalty points in 2024. He's halfway through to a race ban. Okay. I almost thought that after the sprint when he spoke 2 words in Chinese he might just get another penalty because it's Fernando Alonso. But can you imagine George Russell when being told Fernando's going to get close, he's like, "Oh my god, Fernando is going to get close to me. Do I have to panic? Do I have to put all the steering wheel settings on my on my dash before he comes closer?" right? But the funniest moment for me was actually in the free practice. Checo Perez hit a bird on the back straight. Okay. And now his race engineer's name is Hugh Bird.
Oh
So
god.
Checo went onto the radio and said, I hit a bird. Check everything is okay. And then his engineer said, yeah, checking. And then he said, Checo Perez said, it's your brother. Okay. But the strange thing is, Checo Perez is always hitting something. I think in two or three out of these five races, he's hit something. It's either a tear off or now, in this case, Hugh Bird's brother, some bird that they found in China. But it would be strange if Hugh Bird had a brother in China or something. But okay, that's just me and my daddy jokes.
Oh goodness. But speaking of other funny things as well, we actually had a weird scenario where the top three had to park on the grid, but they actually had to go for the interviews and park from inside. And Lando Norris wasn't even briefed about it, so he went in the pit lane, tried to reverse until he realized, does it even make sense for me to go outside now? I might as well put it inside anyway. And that's what he ended up doing. It's a weird little coordination. But Zhou Guan Yu had a parking spot on the grid. What do we think about this, guys? Genuinely, I quite like the sentiment, and it's nice that Formula One wants to bring the home heroes closer. But something in the back of my mind tells me, hey, son, regardless of whether you've done good or bad, you will always be a hero in my eyes. It's that kind of vibe around. If you get your home driver to be celebrated, even though they finish, I don't know, 14th or whatever it might be.
I quite liked it because I mean, if you see China's coming back onto the calendar after 5 years, and the stands were absolutely packed, and they were cheering on Zhou Guan Yu through every single session, and they probably needed this. But at least I liked it. I thought this is a very nice way for them to cheer on and connect with their drivers towards the end. I know he's not the most successful driver in terms of results over these past couple of seasons, but he still had that moment. And I'm just probably going to be waiting for that day when we all turn up at the Indian Grand Prix stands and we are able to cheer on maybe a Kushmaini one of these days at the end of the race. I hope it's not similar to how Zhou Guan Yu had. He managed to get on the grid even though he didn't win the race, but I hope Kush is able to do that or finish on the podium and then we're able to cheer him on. But I thought it was a nice little one.
I have one more. I have one more fun banter point. So we all noticed that this track was resurfaced. That's what the FIA, Pirelli, and the teams were told. When in real, it was painted. It was painted with something. Now here's Carlos Sainz. I absolutely love the. I don't know how he speaks to his girlfriend and his parents and all. I'd love to be a fly on the wall when that happens. Every other driver said, "Yeah, there's some weird paint that's there on the track, and it's darker." And that's pretty much what Magnussen said, Verstappen said, several other drivers literally were like weird paint, something we don't know what's been treated. We'll see where it goes. This is what Carlos Sainz had to say, and I'm going to quote him. I don't think the FIA or the teams quite understands what's been done here. Fine, that's a typical human statement. Now, this is a Carlos Sainz statement. It has been a full resurface or just a weird bitumen treatment to the track. He had to get technical even with something like this.
You know what's the
Ooh,
funny bit? The
yeah.
funny bit is because it's not the drivers and teams that were caught unaware. It was actually the FIA and Pirelli as well. The Chinese Grand Prix organizers did not inform them that they were painting on the tarmac, and even they were caught unaware. So they said, "Okay, yeah, they should have informed us. They did not, but we'll probably work closer and see that this sort of miscommunication does not happen." But even they were surprised that they turned up at the track and it was a lot darker than usual.
And Carlos Sainz eventually with the best explanation possible. Crazy. I mean, what a wild weekend full of some really weird moments, but eventually a good race in the end, won by Max. But if you thought that the sprint action was over and done with, we are going to be back with more from Miami very shortly as well. So stay tuned on the Inside Line F1 podcast, folks, where we'll be back with some more content and also the Miami GP preview coming up shortly. Thank you so much for listening and watching, folks. We'll be back. Bye bye.